Good.
We're good.
Um, hey, welcome back to Practical 2 Amp course. We're doing the champ build. So last time we put together all of the hardware, or most of the hardware, transformers. So now we got a bunch of wires. And today we're gonna try to organize all of this and make this start looking better. And we're starting the assembly process and wiring it up. So right now we got all these wires sticking out. And we want to organize them. So we have two more pieces of hardware to install, and that is the pilot light and the fuse holder. So the pilot light, I like these Fender guys. They take a real light bulb and they're just nice to work with. So I'll put this guy on, then put the fuse holder on, and then start getting some of these wires out of the way. Getting on my nerves right now. I have a clothespin or a little clamp. Really helps kind of get that stuff out of the way. Oh, I forgot to mention Josh from Strange is his child is sick. I also had another guy lined up, Eves. He is kind of new to building and repair. He was supposed to join. His kid is also sick. So just that time of year where it's like warm one day and cold the next and everybody gets sick. So I'm gonna try to have two guests for the next meeting so they can kind of bounce some questions and ideas off of each other. Eves has a nice perspective on things because he's relatively new and still learning. He's done a bunch of builds, so he'll be able to offer advice on like what was confusing for him and how to get around those obstacles, and maybe pose some different unique questions. So, all right, so there's the pilot light. They have pilot lights that are, I'm sorry, pilot lights. They have a tool for this this nut, and I don't have it, and I wish I had it, and I forget where you can even buy it. I think it's New Sensor. If anybody's on the meeting right now and they remember or know where to get it, that'd be awesome. Let me know. They're really kind of a pain to cinch down tight. And this is the
What's
fuse.
the what what's special about that? No, it's that
It,
it's
it
holding that cage.
Yeah, it's just like a weird angle. Like you can't get a wrench on it to really tighten it down. So you have to use like
Mhm.
needle nose pliers, like, and then you just bugger everything up and it doesn't look great. So they have this like offset wrench. All right. So that's the fuse. It's good to tighten everything up like right now while you're putting it together. If you have to loosen it later to move something, then do it. But if you don't tighten them up now, you'll forget, and then the thing will rattle loose one day. These nuts on plastic, like these fuses, you gotta be careful you don't strip them. So that's good. All right. So we got the fuse, the lamp, the volume, and the two input jacks. So on more complicated builds, it's cool. It's good to like put a strip of tape and then label what everything is, so you just don't get confused. Even on amps that I've done several times, sometimes I still forget. So and especially with your input jack, so I'll label this input jack number 2 and this one number 1, just so I wire that. And then just for sake of demonstration, I'll label the volume. I mean, you don't need to label the pilot light and the fuse, but if you had two fuses, you would label one the main fuse and one the high tension fuse. But that keeps yourself organized, so you're not running wires to the incorrect part. Same thing with the preamp tubes. You can do V1. Preamp tubes are typically labeled V1 through however many tubes you have. So V1, V2, V3. This is self-explanatory. This is a 9-pin socket, which are the small ones. And then this is the 8-pin, the power tube, and this is the rectifier. So there's no real way you could get confused here on this one. All right, so let's just, since these wires are nice and tucked out of the way, I'm going to wire up these output transformer wires. So we have the ground that we made the last time. Remember, we made this ground. I'll just kind of twist them together a little bit. And then I'm going to catch the ground. The ground goes to the switch tip. So leave myself a little extra room. When you're new assembling things, or if you're experimenting, leave yourself some room, especially on the things like transformers, so that if you make a mistake or you want to change something, you can change it. These real nice, so this is liquid flux that I'm putting on the wire. When I tin wires, I use liquid flux. Not everybody does that, but it helps it flows really easy and you don't get any globs. Make sure you tuck your PVC wires away. And then so we're pre-tinning, so we're basically making this stranded wire, solid wire. If you don't pre-tin, it's really just a pain in the butt to get those wires in where they need to go, and then you risk them getting little frays, and one little wire can really screw things up. So right now we're going through the ground, and then we're going to this what's called the switch tip. So the switch tip, I'll show you in a second how it works. So output transformers would rather see a output transformers would rather see a closed circuit than an open circuit. And what that means is on your output transformer, on like this simple champ output transformer, you have two wires that go to your output jack. So you have the sound. Let me see. Yeah, you have the sound. Basically, here's the power and the sound come through this red and blue wire, and then the sound goes out through, or goes through the transformer and then out these wires. Well, you have two wires. So you have the ground wire and then the business wire. The business wire goes to the tip of the speaker jack and then goes into the speaker. If these are open, it's not good. Because there's no load and the output transformer just takes all the heat. So it's best if you have a shorting jack like this. So if nothing is plugged in to the speaker jack, basically these two wires are connected together and you have a closed circuit, which the output transformer can hang on a little bit longer when it is like that. Neither situations are good, but that's better. So let's see if I can show you this. All right, so here is what we call a switched jack. It is trying to get this to focus. So it has the tip, which all jacks have, and then it has this guy. Then it has the switch, and then it has another connector here.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
when a jack is plugged into it, or actually, not a jack, when a plug is plugged into the jack, it separates that contact. And that's what happens. And you can use these for all kinds of things to create different circuits, but that's what we're using for here now in the output jack. So I'm going to solder that ground, make sure the sure this casing's not getting soldered too. All right. Get the heat pretty hot because it's connected to the chassis here, so you want a hotter heat. And then you watch as the solder flows. Sometimes you have to turn it around to make solder. Solder is not solder also follows the laws of gravity, so it will fall down onto the socket. I mean, gosh darn it, I can't talk. Fall down onto the lug. It does follow heat as
What
well.
what what do you like for a solder sucker?
Um, I'll show
Saying
you.
the worst should happen and you should get solder somewhere from whence it should not be.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta have a solder sucker in my opinion. I use two things. I use solder sucker and solder braid. But for stuff that we're doing like in this build, mostly use my solder sucker, which is a Jonard. I think it's how you pronounce it, Jonard. It's a big blue one. They make single-handed ones, but the single ones I have bought probably $150 worth of um single-handed solder suckers. But they always break. And oh, it's working now. My single-handed guy. Anyway, I'll show you the one that I like to use. This guy. Um it's the DP100. I think it's made by Jonard Tools, Jonard
Mm-hmm.
Tools. This I went over some of the stuff in the earliest video, like maybe even like the first or second video, and there is even like I even included a list of those things. But yes, you have to use two hands, but the power of the suction is great, and it doesn't get clogged very often. That's why I like it. The suction power on this is greater than these single-handed dudes. I mean, you can kind of hear the difference. These are still nice, and if you can get them to work for you, then great. But the um, the amount of solder these can carry, the amount of solder that these guys can carry, compared to these guys, which this is kind of a pain in the butt to get apart. But gotta clean it out. Where's my trash can? Um, these just hold so much more solder. Uh, they also make like these mechanical ones that like literally have a motor in them and suck kind of continuously.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I haven't bought one. I know a lot of people that like swear by them. Um, you have to clean them out a lot too. There's nothing you're not gonna have to clean out. Um, those machine I don't the only reason I don't have one is because I don't really want to dedicate the space to one because it's bigger than a soldering iron. um yeah, so anyway, these hold the blue one holds more solder than these black ones, so these single-handed ones you're cleaning all of the time. I, I mean this has like actually this has no space in it. This has like the size of a like whatever the next step down of a C battery. Like that's how much space is in here to hold solder.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I know there's a long explanation, but it's that's
But
how I roll.
you do use the braids too, right?
Oh yeah, I use the braids too. Like just to when you're doing like these tube sockets and when you're doing tube sockets and jacks, um, when you're doing tube sockets and jacks, the solder sucker is your best friend. When you're doing PCB, um, solder braid is your friend. And I use this Super Whip number 454 fine braid. It's kind of expensive, but I don't know. I probably go through like 3 or 4 a year of these 50
Mhm.
foot rolls. Um, it seems like 50 foot is the easiest to manage, and any price breaks beyond the 50 feet are negligible. I think they sell like 100 foot, and I don't think they sell anything bigger than 100 foot. Um, so I always have with and this is with all of my expendables, tool wise, like such as um ah, great wire fell off, such as solder wick, um, a flux. I always have what I'm using and then a backup. And then when I go and get use my backup, I go buy a new one. That way, if like, I always have an extra one if I run out. Um, and if I run out of, like, obviously other expendables like resistors and things, you buy more than two, of course. Like resistors, I buy like the 500 of certain designations. Some designations you don't use that much, only buy 100 or so. Um, it's you spend a lot of time waiting for parts. Um, a lot of time. So what did I say? You spend a lot of time ordering parts. So if you can decrease the amount of time that you spend on the computer, you're increasing your productivity. So if it takes you 5 minutes to order one part, it takes you 5 minutes to order 1,000 parts. So you might as well order 1,000.
Mhm.
Obviously, it just depends on the prices and things like that, and what you can store. All of these have stipulations. Sometimes you're not sure if you're gonna like it. Um, I've recently really increased the amount of things I carry because I am like, it's like, oh my God, I place an order every day, you know. So, um, and not to mention the price breaks you get on when you order in bulk too. So that's reason enough to order in bulk. But what you really save is the amount of time you spend ordering things. And obviously, I'm talking about when if you're gonna if you're gonna actually do repairs for a living. If you're just um resistors never go bad. Capacitors kind of have a shelf life. So I don't want a bunch of I can have resistors sitting around for the next 20 years. So really, once you figure out the type of resistor you like to use, um, you might as well buy as many as you can possibly manage to store because they never go bad. I'll, a lot of my resistors, I'm pretty sure I have a lifetime supply. And you can buy like the price tip like of resistors go from like, all right, if you buy one, um, they are 25 cents a piece. And I'm shooting out like a random number of resistor that I know. If you buy one, it's 27 cents a piece. If you buy two, it's 22 cents a piece. If you buy 100, they're 11 cents a piece. If you buy 1,000, they're 4 cents a piece. So like you might as well buy 1,000. Not of every value, but the values that you're in a lifetime, you may use 1,000 of them. Because it also, like, I have resistors I'm storing in the attic because I don't have room to store that kind of stuff. my drawers hold about 100 resistors. So my drawers have about 100 resistors in them. And I'm actually getting ready to upgrade my, what am I looking at here? I'm getting ready to upgrade my resistor storage system. And so I have 2 or 3 drawers designated to the same value, that because you have half watt, quarter watt, 1 watt, 2 watt, 3 watt. Um, I use most all values, most common wattage is 1 watt. So that's what I buy in crazy amount of bulk. And then there are a handful of values that I use a lot of 3 watts. There's less values that I use 5 watts, very few values that I need in 10 watts. But you can't have all of them just like sitting in the same drawer. It's like every time you pull a drawer out, you have to siphon through all the stuff that you have. So right now, this is the center tap for they call it the high tension supply, or you could call it the um, B plus. So it's a red and yellow wire. These are the red wires. So the red and yellow wire is the center tap for these wires. If that wasn't attached, you wouldn't have a point. The voltage wouldn't have a point of reference. So you would get uneven voltage. That's what that is for. Oh, so let's see. I'm going to get these stupid heater wires out of the way. So even still, I still try to leave a little slack. Even though I kind of know where everything I know where everything's gonna go. I mean, I don't build champs every day, every week. But I build enough amps that I kind of know how things should be lined up. So heater wires should be twisted. It reduces noise because it's phase canceling basically. Some of these terms, anything I say, I might be speaking incorrectly. I might not be explaining it well, or you may misunderstand me. So if I say something that sounds stupid, either A, call me out, or if or B, maybe you're listening wrong. So just that's a good life lesson for anything on the internet. So I twist the wires, put a little flux on them, just a little tiny bit. Flux's job is to clean the metal so the solder can adhere to it well. And now these wires are clean. The flux also helps heat it evenly because it basically starts boiling. And I was going to say about these heater wires is that yes, they need to be twisted, but they don't need to be. It's not like if you twist them, you don't need to twist them so tight that it's difficult to do, or they just need to be twisted a little bit. And I'll show you. I'll show you how. Yes,
What's the pot that's going to?
this is the pilot light.
Okay.
So it starts at the pilot. The heaters will start at the pilot light, and then they go to each tube. The heaters are what provide it basically excites the electron in the tube. It allows it allows the electrons to start flowing. That is when you look at a tube, that's the thing that's lit up inside. It's called the heater, or the heaters, or the filaments. I guess the more appropriate term is the filaments. It's the same thing that's in a light bulb. Like when you have you got a little light bulb and you see the filament glowing, it's actually in a controlled burn. And the only reason it doesn't burn is because there's no oxygen in the light bulb. That's what's going on. Like a tube, I mean, sorry, a light bulb, not an LED one. A light bulb, incandescent light bulb, is the same thing as a tube. It just has a filament in it. Doesn't have any of the other parts. They use the in a light bulb, they use the filament for illumination. In a tube, they use the light bulb start the electron flow. And then all the other parts in a tube control the electron flow. And then the parts outside of the tube, the resistors and the capacitors and things, control other aspects of what the tube is doing. So sometimes we use tubes for rectification. We use tubes for audio amplification. You can use them for all kinds of things. All right, so we got a couple of those resistors out of the way. This is our B plus. We're gonna hang on to that for a minute. Let's see. Let me get the yellow one. No, let me do the red. So when you're wiring up tube sockets or really anything, you want to look and see what's the next thing you have to wire up. For example, I'm about to wire up this socket, and two wires need to go let me get something to point with. Two wires need to go on the back and two wires need to go on the front. If I wire the wires to the front, it's going to be hard to wire the ones on the back without burning the other wires. So solder the back ones first. I know that sounds super simple, and you would figure that out the hard way because you would do it and be like, gosh darn it. And then, yeah, so let's see. And these yellow wires are also filament wires. They are filament wires for the rectifier tube, which takes a different voltage. The rectifier tube takes 5 volts. All the other tubes in your amp, the power tube and the preamp tube, are 6.3 volts. Well, actually, they're 12 volts, but you get 6.3 per side. All right, so red. Let's do red first. Let me push these dudes out of the way. And this stuff is kind of overwhelming when you first start. But man, once you just do a few and you start to understand what everything is, it's like it's kind of like hard to mess up. It's like, I mean, you still do mess up, but because there's just so many parts. All right, this goes to 4 and 6. So I don't like how tight that is. I just want a little extra slack because, like I said, I hate when I make a mistake and then I can't undo my mistake. And I don't want to splice wires. And with transformer wires, whatever you cut is gone forever. So I am going to twist them and I want them to go down to let me see. I want them to go down to the bottom of the chassis. That'll give me some extra slack, but it'll still look neat. So that looks about right. I'm gonna snip it, and then I'll take them out. So I basically just like measured them. Now I'm twisting them. Twisting these wires is more for aesthetics than anything. This doesn't. These don't have to be twisted. Special juice. you get this flux remover. It's super sticky. It's messy. It's sticky. Uh, and when I tin, a lot of times I just put a little solder on the tip of my soldering iron. You want to make sure it's clean. It'll get black from like dirt and dust while you're soldering, and because you're burning whatever gets on there. So make sure it's nice and clean. Um, and then I'll just put a little solder on the tip, and that's how I'll tin my wires. Some wires come pre-tinned, and obviously you don't have to tin those. I only tin the ones that have the potential to fray. All right, let's see here. I always work with my fat fingers, but like it's better to work with your tools like I'm doing now. And I'm kind of doing it this way because it's easier to see on the video. But it really is the better way to work. I'm just not used to it because I just never did it. My buddy Mark Bartel from Tone King Amps and now Bartel Amps. If you watch him work, the pliers are like an extension of his body. It's pretty impressive, actually. He looks like a robot. And when you're doing this, it's especially it's a pain in the butt in this tiny chassis to do what I'm doing right now. It's really a pain. So you just take your time and don't take any shortcuts. Make sure the wire is is connected to whatever you're soldering to it well before you solder. You don't have to tie any knots or anything. You just want to make sure it's not moving. You don't want it to move after you put solder on it. You'll get a cold solder joint. All right, I'm heating up the part and the pin at the same time, and then adding the solder kind of in between. You're really supposed to um, heat the solder up on the opposite side of whatever you're touching the soldering tip with, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. Um, Sometimes I'll do a little bend on the wire before I actually attach it. That helps get things started. Sometimes that's all you need too. Um, you want to make sure no part of the wire is touching the other socket. And let's see if I can pinch this. So let's see. Can you see that?
Yep.
All right. So extra pointer. So this wire right here, you see how there's like some extra there? It's kind of close to this socket. It's too close. I want it to be real tight up against the other socket, so there's no chance of it hitting anything else. In this particular application, it's not a big deal because that pin is not attached to anything, but just as a good practice, so you don't make that mistake. Oh, that doesn't, you say to yourself, oh, that doesn't matter that much. I'm just going to leave it alone. Well, then you're like, oh shit, never mind. That does matter a lot. So, you don't want to find that out the hard way. The All right, that looks good. That the only thing about the champ builds for new people is that the chassis are so compact that it's it's hard for an inexperienced person to kind of figure all that out. Um, Not impossible, of course, just a little bit difficult. There are some other kits that are a little bit more open, that are a little bit more open. Um, but StuMax instructions and
Do they
quality
make,
of everything.
do they make a right-angled soldering pencil?
I don't know. Probably. I don't know. Not it's not super common, but they make all kinds of things for industry. Um, and then these right angled pliers are freaking awesome. Actually, they're not right. It's just like a little bit of an angle, but smooth tip. Good pliers are you don't know what you're missing until you get some pliers that aren't crap. I've been working with cheap pliers for a long time, and then I got some really nice ones at the recommendation of a friend, and I was like, "Oh my God, what have I been missing?" All right, so we're going for the 8 and 1, so that should be 8. Bend. You can just bend those tabs. You see that? You can just bend them kind of out of the way. Um, and the pins are labeled. It said it's I'm probably not going to show up on camera, but it's very hard to see, but each pin is labeled. And they just go clockwise. All right, show you this. There's a pin on the tube. It's an indexing pins right there, so you make sure the pin goes correctly, and then they're labeled on the outside. On the outside, if you go clockwise, the numbers go down 8, 7, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. On the inside, if you look at it, the numbers go up. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and ends on 8. Um, so if you have to count, like if you only see one number, especially like in old amps, you might not be able to see because of whatever dirt or they just got hot and melted away. And some amps, like old amps, I've seen tube sockets with no numbers. You're gonna have to count. Um, then you start to memorize where this stuff goes. Like on 6L, most power tubes that we use as amp players, builders, whatever, are like the plates of all the power tubes that we most commonly use are or pin 3. And then directly next to that is the screen, which is pin 4. So it's like, oh, where's the plate? The plate's this blue wire, and I know like it's usually a blue and a brown wire. Could be different, but usually fenders and stuff, blue and brown. So it's like, oh, where's the blue wire? Okay, that's pin 3. Then 4 is the pin next to it. So you just memorize that stuff, and it becomes pretty easy to you. So
Easily-ish.
again, easily-ish. Um, I'm gonna tuck these guys down there too. Some people, you can definitely run them. You can definitely run these wires straight from the transformer, boom, over to the socket. It makes it really short, and it's nice and tight. Um, I like to at least give myself a little bit of room when I'm prototyping, when I haven't built the amp before. That way, I can always shorten the wires. I can't make them longer. Um, you can, but it's not good to splice. It's good to avoid it. That's what I should say. It's good to avoid that. Um, so all right. Turn these bad boys up again. And we got things looking good. So all these transformer wires are kind of out of the way.
It does look good. Does flux go bad in solder? I
It
noticed
sorry, go ahead.
I just noticed like a lot of times I just get like dirty looking dirty looking joints, and I think it's the flux or something like it's that
Um,
resiny looking stuff.
yeah, it's just it doesn't necessarily go bad as much as it evaporates, and then it's sticky, so dirt and dust and everything sticks to it. It's good to get the dirt and the dust off because dirt dirt and dust can become conductive. Um, and even in my bottle that I have, like I got this that bottle that I've been using, um, it'll start getting real thick. And all I do is add some alcohol to it to make it thinner. Dude, Flux lasts a long time. Like I've only and because well, some people don't even use it, which again, no judgment. It's fine. I just for whatever reason, when I started learning, learned to use Flux. Um, but I really only use it when I'm tinning things. I don't. If I were a real questionable joint, like on an old amp, you should clean them, clean it first. And as long as you clean it, your solder has flux in it. And that's why like people that don't use it, like Josh doesn't use it. He's like he was being nice the other day. He was like, dude, why would I use flux, man? It comes in the solder, which he's right. Um, and if you use a hot enough soldering iron, it doesn't matter anyway. But I kind of err on the side of a colder soldering iron. Like I use just enough heat. Um, which I don't know. It's just the way I do it. It's not necessarily right or wrong. And I mean,
So flux leads to being able to use less heat.
yeah, yep. Because you don't have to like you either have to burn the you have to burn the whatever is off. You have to burn off whatever is on the piece of metal to make the solder flow well, or you have to use or solder or flux will clean it. That's what flux does. It cleans the joint. Um, so yeah, does that make sense? You can just
Yep.
burn it off if your soldering iron's hot enough. All right. What am I doing now? Okay. No, well, all the transformer leads are done except for these two, and this is our AC line. So again, the we want this white wire to be connected to the neutral directly to the neutral over an incoming AC cord. The black wire we want to go to the fuse and then from the fuse to the switch. That way, if the switch fails, the fuse will blow. If anything goes wrong, this is the hot that comes from the house, the fuse will blow because it's the first thing it is connected to. Um, and then the white wire will connect straight to the AC cable, and the AC cable is not connected yet. That's the last thing we'll do because we don't want this big honking AC cable to be sitting around. And actually, I'm gonna change. So you can wire this white one up a couple of different ways. You can attach it to one of these pins on the rectifier socket that that's not being used. You just need a connection point. If you look at the bottom of a rectifier tube, you see some pins are missing. It looks like somebody from West Virginia, right? Uh, they teeth are missing, and those teeth um, correlate to the pins that aren't being used on the rectifier tube. So you can use those pins for whatever you want. Um,
How much is coming out of them?
coming out of what?
The pins. Are you talking about using them to power something else or?
No, nothing's coming out of the pins.
Oh, okay.
Just using them as a connection point.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Yeah, so but I like to keep my electrical connections away from things that aren't needed. So like on a vintage amp, I might do things so I don't have to drill a hole or add something that's going to look out of place. But on this amp, which is brand new, instead of using this, so we added this solder lug here for a designated ground because if on the last episode, that uh, we explained that the AC ground should have its own dedicated ground point that's connected to nothing else. So we changed that from the original layout because they had it connected to the transformer bolts. And we explained in the last episode that that's not good because the transformer can move. The transformer can vibrate and then eventually come loose. So anyway, we have a dedicated ground. Um, and I want to I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna use this lug this turret lug. I'm gonna put it here. It'll be my ground, and then another wire will be for the white wire. That nice all dedicated spot for everything. This hole isn't wide enough for this screw. It probably is. I could probably thread it, but what I do in that situation is get my drill. Put a reamer on there. I don't know if this is gonna work. This isn't the. Let me just get the one that I normally use. So I take my reamer, and it just needs to be reamed out just a little bit. Boom, big enough for that screw.
If anybody wants to jump in here while Luke's doing this, feel free.
Yeah, I'm always. Oh, I've learned a lot by people saying, hey Luke, did you know you could do it this way, or what do you think about doing it that way? And I'm like, I never heard of that before, and that sounds like a great idea. Josh just told me a way that on the last episode, he told me a way about wiring the heaters on these types of amps, these single-ended amps, which I am going to do. I'm going to save it for the next episode so he can explain it again. But yeah,
On the
there's more than
subject
one
of
way.
old flux, I've got 2 tins of my dad's old flux that's probably 50 or 60 years old. And I was using it today and it still works fine.
Yep. Yeah, it doesn't really go bad. Is it liquid flux or was it paste flux?
It's like a gooey paste with some
Yeah.
cool devilish artwork on it.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you can revitalize with a solvent too. So like um that's just neutral. I have a fume extractor. Um it'd be too loud to use it right now. That's why I'm not using it. Uh I should use it more often than not, but the the fumes are like I use leaded solder, but the lead does not get aerosolized, so that's not a concern. You should be washing your hands, not touching your mouth. You should be getting the lead all over your fingers and then sticking your finger in your mouth. Um, but this the smoke is just the flux and impurities coming off of the solder. Uh, Not necessarily bad for you, but I've noticed that I think it's the flux. It'll create pimples. So if I'm soldering a lot and I'm not using my fume extractor, I'll get pimples.
Really?
Yeah. It's just like, it's sticky grease. like the flux is like a
Yeah.
nasty sticky grease. There's been lots of discussion online. I don't know, people just trying to be right about something. If flux is bad for you, and they smoke, and there are people that use respirators and fume extractors, and it's like, man, I would be more concerned about it if I was soldering several amps a day, but I use the fume extractor when I'm soldering a lot. And all right, well, all the wires are connected. Boom, baby. Um
Look
I'll
at
show you
that.
so all the wires are nice tucked away. The next thing is to so we can keep going with it. What time is it? Let's see. Let me just explain a couple things, and then we'll talk about next time, and
Okay. Yeah.
that'll be it. So this is good. No, that was good progress.
Yeah.
Getting all that stuff out of the way.
You didn't burn yourself once.
Nope. Um, I just have to. You know what? No one caught that. I wired that incorrectly.
What happened?
Shoot. I I would love to say that I've never done this before, but I've done it lots of times. Um I the so the wire for the wire for the all right, so AC, all right, hold on, let me get me that's not I'm just gonna have to explain it on here. Um Bear with me, don't get dizzy. Close your eyes. I'll tell you when to open them. All right, so the all right, line voltage from the wall comes out of the AC cord, which is not installed. It should go into the fuse, out of the fuse to the switch. And then when the switch is powered on, the power from the wall goes into the transformer. Right now, how I have it wired up, the transformer is connected to the fuse. So if I connected the wall to the fuse, the amp's gonna turn right on like there's no switch. So I need to move this wire over to the switch and then connect another wire from the switch to the fuse.
Ah,
You understand?
yep.
So I don't do I honestly I do this all the time. I don't know what my disconnect is. But look at this. I left enough length on the wire that it's still gonna reach. Otherwise, I would have had to do something else. That would have been less pretty than this. So there we go. Move that bad boy around. It's just a single pole, single throw switch, so it doesn't matter which lug it goes on. I am actually gonna put a piece of shrink on here because I hate the idea that something might touch this lug with the AC wall voltage, and let's just err on the side of caution. Hate a lot of shrink in amps, because it makes them hard to work on and test voltages and things like that. So slip the shrink on there, trim my wire back up. The flux. You shouldn't really blow on joints. I know if you're blowing on it, blowing the smoke away, not the flux. I mean, I'm not blowing the joint. bend that around, make a good connection, and then I'm gonna make sure it's straight on. Sorry, no, you can't see that. Look. So I'm trying to make that sure that wire is kind of straight on as I can, so that then I can slide the heat shrink on there. While everything's still hot, you can move it. Just make sure it stays real still while the solder cools. And then before you slide your flux on, you really want to make sure that joint is cool, because it'll melt your shrink as you slide it on. And then I usually use a heat gun, but I'm just going to use that for now. All right, so tuck that away. Let's see, I have and then from the other side, all right, I got a piece of wire here from the transformer. I'm gonna wire it up like that. Same thing. I like to use the cloth covered wire, but with this transformer who has PVC wire, just because I'm kind of OCD, I like to use the same type of wire of whatever else is being soldered to it. So the power transformer has that PVC wire. So I'm using another piece of the PVC wire that I cut off of this. So it's kind of uniform. It makes no difference as long as it's the right gauge, and the gauge has to do with how much current it can handle. It's not really a concern in this amp. I mean, generally, if you're using 20 gauge wire for things, you're going to be in the clear. Except when you get into these big 100-watt amps, you might need to use 18 gauge for the heaters. This wire is already long enough, so I'm just gonna trim and solder the other side. We should do this at night, Ian, so I'll give you something to fall asleep to.
I'm with you.
You with me today?
I mean, as much as I can be. I don't understand any of it.
Yeah.
You're good at soldering, Luke. I'm with you.
Thanks.
Trevor, do you understand where all the electrons go?
All around.
But do you understand why they do it?
Because that's what they do.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right. And then with the fuse, the last thing, all right, so everything's now wired correctly. I'm going to I'll probably zip tie these wires together a little bit just to make sure they're nice and tidy. If you noticed, I soldered to this lug, not this lug. This lug will be for my black AC cable, and that is because it's the first thing that gets disconnected when you take the fuse out, because the fuse is on a spring. You don't want your line voltage coming through this pin. It's just a safety thing. It's certainly overkill. I mean, just unplug your amp before you use it. But some of these things are laws, and some of them are just kind of common sense. All right, so I fixed that. Glad I caught that before someone called me an idiot. Yeah, so so I'll just show you my fume extractor real quick. So this is a Kodo fume extractor. I think they're like 90 bucks.
That
I
got
put
charcoal in it somewhere, or
what's that?
does that have charcoal in it somewhere, or is it just moving the
Yeah.
tubes away from you?
It's got a charcoal filter inside. Let's see if I can open it. I did modify mine to stick on the wall. See.
Should I unspotlight one of your?
Yeah, why don't you unspotlight this guy? I don't know if was that helpful. I forgot I was even doing that other one. Yeah,
I think it was just to get two angles, you know.
yeah, some two things to look at kind of thing. The charcoal filter. Charcoal filters are cheap. The way that it's supposed to work is it has a control knob back here, and that's the on off, but it's variable. But I didn't like using that because it was like you had to turn it on and then turn it all the way up. I just want a switch, so I just put a switch on it. It's the little things. What else? So yeah, my soldering pump I put up here in a holster. It's on my left hand. That makes it easy to grab and easy to put back. And then
You always put it away cocked.
I try to, but it doesn't always work that way.
Might be hard on the spring too.
Yeah, it just depends. It just depends on what I'm doing. Yeah, I would love to make sure it was always cocked when it was put away, but usually doesn't happen that way. Soldering iron on my right, and all my hand tools on my right, and then my solder is on my left, and I keep my solder in a roll on a roll underneath my bench, because I can just pick this up. I can just pick my solder up, solder, and then drop it, and then when I'm soldering, I just like blindly grab it and I know where it is rather than searching all. The other way to do it is have it in your hand and then solder and then put it down and solder and then put it down. But I would lose it all the time. It would drive me insane. So now I never have to look for my solder. They also make these contraptions. They also make these contraptions that sit on your bench, and it does the same thing as my roll that's underneath the bench, but it just sits on the top of your bench. And I used to have it that way, but I dropped it in the amp a couple of times and didn't realize it was there, and you turn the amp on and so now it's always underneath of the bench. That's the way I like to do it. I hate things going over top of the amp, because I, just out of a risk of dropping it in there.
Oh yeah.
But if you're diligent, everybody does things different ways. If you're diligent about it, it's the same thing about like having tools above your workbench when you're working on guitars. Like, oh, you could drop your ruler on top of a guitar. I mean, totally. But plenty of people do it, and never have any accidents. But I can be clumsy at times, so I try to avoid all that stuff. Actually, all of my wires, my signal wire for my generator, my output wire, my AC is all in the front. So it's not, so I don't have to reach behind the amp for all of these things. They're all in the front, except my kill switch for everything powered into the amp is up here. I wish it was somewhere different, but right now it's not. Hopefully later on I will change things up. I need to change a lot of things up. I need to change where my tubes are. I need to basically make all of this resistor storage, because I have way too many resistors and not enough drawers. So next time I'm going to be assembling the board. So here's the board. I'll be assembling the board, and then probably I might have time to install the board next time. So we'll see, or maybe we'll just keep it short. Depends on what whoever joins me.
And
I
hope Josh does, because he's way better at hanging out with you than I am.
Yeah, it's great, man. It's great. Him being on and just talking to other techs,
Yeah,
it's great.
If you
So-
if you get caught last second again next time, give me a heads up with as much time as you got, and I'll see if I can
Find somebody.
scramble to get somebody on. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
because
Yeah, he just
I
told me like
suck.
an hour ago. All right, well, I guess that's
Well-
it.
Well, thank
It's
you,
no-
Luke.
Thank you.
Does
And
anybody, Mike, you want to unmute and say thanks to Luke for taking the time?
I do. Thanks, Luke. It's cool.
thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. And if anybody has any questions, whether you're watching this as a recording or whatever, just let me know.
Awesome.
I got another little thing about things not being on the bench and over the